November 13, 1942, 1:48 am. Iron Bottom Sound off Guadalcanal. Rear Admiral Daniel Callaghan stands on the bridge of San Francisco as his radar operator delivers impossible news. 14 Japanese warships, including 2 battleships, closing at 23 knots. Distance 27,000 yards and shrinking. His entire task force, 5 cruisers, 8 destroyers, has maybe 12 minutes before contact. The math is brutal. Japanese battleship Hiei displaces 36,000 tons, carries 14-inch guns that can pierce steel at 20 miles. San Francisco, 9,400 tons, 8-inch guns effective at maybe 15,000 yards. The Japanese have him outgunned, outweighed, and they're coming through the narrow strait where his ships can't maneuver. Standard doctrine says pull back. Reform. Wait for dawn when American aircraft can help. Callaghan has 13 ships against 14 enemy vessels built for surface combat. Survival rate for light cruisers engaging battleships at night, roughly 11%. His men are exhausted from 3 days of continuous action. Half his ships have battle damage. He's operating in pitch darkness with primitive radar. No time to coordinate fire control, and the Japanese excel at night fighting. They've trained for it religiously for a decade. But Daniel Callaghan is about to do something no American admiral has attempted in this war. In the next 17 minutes, he'll close to 3,000 yards, less than 2 miles, and fight battleships the way you'd fight in an alley. He'll turn a naval engagement into a brawl. His ships will collide with enemy vessels. Sailors will fire rifles at battleship crews. He'll personally direct fire against a battleship from a range so close that missing becomes mathematically impossible. And when it's over, he'll have saved Guadalcanal, stopped a Japanese bombardment that would have destroyed Henderson Field, and changed the entire Pacific War. Because Daniel Callaghan learned something on the streets of San Francisco that the Naval Academy never taught. Sometimes the only way to beat someone bigger is to get close enough that size doesn't matter. Daniel Judson Callaghan, born July 26, 1890, in San Francisco, California, the third son of an Irish immigrant streetcar conductor, he grew up in a neighborhood where you settled disputes with fists before words. His brothers remembered him at age 7, bloodied and grinning after fighting 3 older boys who'd stolen his lunch. He lost the fight, but kept coming back until they gave the lunch back out of sheer exhaustion. His mother asked why he didn't just tell a teacher. He said, "They'd just do it tomorrow." Even then, he understood, some problems don't end until you make them end. But to understand how a streetcar conductor's son ended up commanding a desperate naval battle at point-blank range, you need to know what made him different from every other admiral in the Pacific Fleet. June 4, 1911, Annapolis, Maryland. Daniel Callaghan graduated from the Naval Academy ranked 39th out of 193 midshipmen. Respectable but unremarkable. What caught attention was his thesis on close-quarters naval tactics. While classmates wrote about battleship gunnery at maximum range, Callaghan analyzed Japanese tactics during the Russo-Japanese War, specifically the Battle of Tsushima, where Admiral Togo closed to devastating range. His conclusion troubled his professors. Superior firepower becomes irrelevant if you're willing to accept damage to get close enough. The paper earned a B- and a note, tactically questionable given modern naval architecture. 20 years later, he'd bet 13 ships and 5,000 lives on that questionable thesis. His first command came unusually late. Most officers his age commanded destroyers by 1920. Callaghan spent years in staff positions, the Navy's way of saying competent but not exceptional. He didn't complain, he studied instead. Every ship he served on, he'd spend off hours in the engine room learning machinery, in the fire control station understanding gunnery, with damage control parties learning what keeps ships floating after they're hit. Shipmates noticed. He asked technical questions that admirals never bothered with. How fast can you shift magazines? How much flooding can this compartment take? If the bridge is destroyed, where do you direct the ship from? He was preparing for something, but no one knew what. October 17, 1938. Washington, D.C. President Franklin Roosevelt needed a new naval aide. The position required someone who understood Navy operations but could translate military necessity into political reality. Callaghan, now a captain, got the job despite having no political experience. Within weeks, Roosevelt discovered why his staff recommended the quiet Irishman. Callaghan never sugarcoated bad news, never played political games, and, most importantly, could explain complex naval strategy in plain language. When Roosevelt asked about Pacific defenses in early 1941, Callaghan brought maps and did something unprecedented. He showed the president not optimal fleet dispositions but worst-case scenarios. If Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, here's what we lose. If they don't sink our carriers, here's what we can do. If they do, here's how we fight anyway. Roosevelt asked if Callaghan was always this pessimistic. "No, sir," Callaghan replied. "I'm Irish. We prepare for the worst and call it realism." After Pearl Harbor, Callaghan requested transfer to sea duty. He was 51 years old, prime age for comfortable staff positions that led to safe promotions. Instead, he asked for a cruiser command. The Navy gave him San Francisco, freshly repaired after bomb damage at Pearl Harbor. He joined her in April 1942, spent 6 months drilling the crew relentlessly on one scenario: night combat at close range. His executive officer questioned the training. "Sir, current doctrine says maintain range advantage." Callaghan replied, "Current doctrine assumes we'll see them coming." November 12, 1942. 4:30 p.m. Off Guadalcanal. Admiral William Halsey, Commander South Pacific, sent Callaghan impossible orders: stop the Japanese bombardment force heading for Guadalcanal. Intelligence reported 2 battleships, multiple cruisers, destroyers. Halsey's message ended: sink them or drive them back. Henderson Field depends on you. Callaghan studied the intercept data. The Japanese would arrive after midnight, bombard the airfield at dawn, make invasion possible. His task force was smaller, outgunned, and lacked the newest radar. Standard naval tactics said wait for daylight, use air cover. But daylight meant Henderson Field destroyed, 19,000 Marines without air support, Guadalcanal lost. Callaghan called his captains. "We're going in tonight. Close engagement, no fleet formation. Find a target, close the range, make every shot count." His cruiser commanders looked at each other. One whispered to another, "He wants us to knife fight battleships." The other whispered back, "I think that's exactly what he wants." By November 1942, Daniel Callaghan had served 31 years, advised a president through Pearl Harbor, and commanded ships through 3 major engagements. He'd earned a reputation for unusual tactical thinking and absolute calm under pressure. But nothing would compare to what happened next. November 13, 1942, 1:48 am. Japanese battleships at 27,000 yards in closing. This is how he did it. 1:48 am. Bridge of us, San Francisco. Callaghan stares at the radar screen, watching the phosphorescent blips converge. His radar officer, Lieutenant Commander Bruce McCandless, reads ranges every 30 seconds, 24,000 yards, 22,000, 20,000. The Japanese are coming through the strait in 2 columns, standard formation, expecting no opposition. Japanese intelligence said American ships withdrew this afternoon. They're wrong. Callaghan has positioned his 13 ships in a single column heading straight toward them. No complex battle plan, no carefully coordinated fire distribution, just 13 ships sailing toward 14 in the dark. He gave 3 orders before entering the strait. First, don't fire until he gives the word. Second, when you engage, get close. Third, pick your own targets. No time for centralized fire control. His staff thought he'd lost his mind. Naval combat at night required careful coordination, pre-assigned targets, maximum range engagement. Callaghan had thrown out the doctrine manual. He understood something his staff didn't. In darkness, with primitive radar, perfect coordination was impossible. But chaos? Chaos could work both ways. If he accepted chaos, made it his weapon instead of his enemy, he could turn a disadvantage into opportunity. The Japanese trained for precision night combat. He was about to give them a bar fight. 150 am. Distance, 18,000 yards. The weight is crushing. Sailors at battle stations hear the range calls over the intercom, watch the seconds tick past, calculate mentally how close 18,000 yards is, just over 10 miles, normally maximum gun range, but they can barely see 300 yards in the darkness. Someone vomits. No one comments. On San Francisco's bridge, Callaghan stands motionless, hands clasped behind his back. His staff expects orders. He says nothing. 16,000 yards. Still nothing. 14,000 yards. The tension becomes physical, officers gripping railings, sweat despite the cool night, breathing shallow. 12,000 yards. One officer whispers, "Sir?" Callaghan raises his hand slightly. Wait. Then, at 10,000 yards, a Japanese destroyer fires a star shell. Artificial daylight floods the strait. Suddenly, both fleets can see each other. American ships in column, Japanese ships in two columns. Everyone exactly where they weren't supposed to be. Mixed together, formations overlapping. It's chaos. Perfect. Impossible chaos. The Japanese commander, Admiral Hiroaki Abe, hesitates. His ships are intermixed with American vessels. He can't fire without hitting his own. Callaghan doesn't hesitate. Over the radio, odd ships fire to starboard, even ships to port. Get them. It's barely an order. More like permission. 151 am. Distance, 6,000 yards. Cushing, leading destroyer, opens fire on a Japanese destroyer at 5,000 yards, practically touching distance in naval terms. Seconds later, the entire American line erupts. San Francisco's 8-inch guns fire on a target so close the muzzle flash illuminates the enemy ship's hull number. Callaghan grabs the fire control microphone. Get the big one. He's spotted Hiei, the Japanese battleship, 8,000 yards ahead. San Francisco's guns swing toward the massive silhouette. First salvo, 6 shells. At this range, on a target that size, all 6 hit. Hiei's armor shrugs off 8-inch shells like mosquito bites. Her 14-inch guns rotate toward San Francisco. The size difference is absurd. Hiei displaces 4 times San Francisco's tonnage. Her guns fire shells weighing 1,485 pounds versus San Francisco's 335-pound shells. But Callaghan has a counter. He orders flank speed, turns toward Hiei. Distance drops to 6,000 yards. 5,000. 4,000. San Francisco is charging a battleship. The crew thinks their admiral has gone insane. They're right and wrong simultaneously. 152 am. Distance, 3,200 yards. At 3,200 yards, less than 2 miles, something strange happens. Hiei's main guns can't depress low enough to hit San Francisco. Naval architects designed battleship guns for long-range combat, never imagining anything would get this close. Hiei's secondary batteries fire frantically, but the range is too close for proper targeting solutions. San Francisco's guns, designed for shorter engagement, pour shells into Hiei's superstructure at point-blank range. 8-inch shells won't penetrate the battleship's belt armor, but they don't need to. They rip through her unarmored bridge, radar arrays, fire control stations, radio rooms, all the things that make a battleship more than floating armor. Then Atlanta, a light cruiser, appears out of the darkness on Callaghan's port side. She's taken torpedo damage. Drifting. On fire. Between Atlanta and San Francisco, a Japanese destroyer materializes doing 30 knots. The three ships form a triangle, each less than 2,000 yards apart. The destroyer fires torpedoes at San Francisco, misses by 50 yards. Atlanta fires on the destroyer, hits. San Francisco fires on the destroyer, hits. The destroyer fires back, hits Atlanta. Atlanta fires on San Francisco by mistake. Her radar can't distinguish friend from enemy in the chaos, kills 19 men. San Francisco returns fire reflexively before someone screams ceasefire. Friendly. All of this happens in 45 seconds. 1:53 am. Range 2,900 yards to Hiei. Callaghan sees his chance. Hiei is visible in the firestorm, her superstructure blazing from hits, turning to escape. He orders San Francisco to parallel Hiei's course, maintaining 3,000 yards. For the next 3 minutes, the cruiser and battleship sail side by side, exchanging fire at a range where both can't miss. San Francisco's crew fires as fast as human hands can load shells. Gun crews work in mechanical rhythm, load, fire, load, fire, until the barrels glow red. They hit Hiei 85 times. Hiei hits back with her secondary batteries, 6-inch guns that weren't designed for this kind of brawl. A shell hits San Francisco's bridge. The explosion kills Callaghan instantly. Also dead, his chief of staff, his communications officer, his navigator, his signal officer. The bridge becomes a slaughterhouse. Bruce McCandless, the radar officer, survives because he was standing behind a bulkhead checking a chart. He finds himself the senior surviving officer on the bridge. He's 31 years old. Around him, bodies, twisted steel, flames, and through the shattered windows, Hiei still firing. McCandless grabs the intercom. This is McCandless. I have the con. All stations continue engagement. 1:56 am. Without Callaghan's coordination, the battle becomes pure chaos. Uslafi, a destroyer, closes to 1,000 yards from Hiei and fires every weapon she has. When her main guns run out of armor-piercing shells, the crew loads high-explosive rounds designed for shore bombardment and fires those. When Laffy's captain sees they're not penetrating, he orders machine guns to fire at Hiei's bridge, 50-caliber bullets against a battleship, like throwing pebbles at a tank, but they do it anyway. Japanese sailors on Hiei's deck fire back with rifles. A naval battle has become an infantry firefight. Us Cushing and Japanese destroyer Udachi collide, tear apart, both sinking. Us Barton takes a torpedo, breaks in half, sinks in seconds. Us Monson is caught in crossfire from 3 Japanese ships, hit by 37 shells in 2 minutes, becomes floating wreckage. But the Americans keep coming. Every ship damaged or sinking takes enemies with them. Us Portland, her stern blown off by a torpedo, can only sail in circles. So her captain sails circles around damaged Japanese ships and fires every rotation. 2:10 am. The battle ends because both sides simultaneously lose the will to continue. Japanese Admiral Abe, his flagship battered, orders withdrawal. American ships, half destroyed, let them go because they're physically incapable of pursuit. Of Callaghan's 13 ships, 2 are sunk, 4 severely damaged, rest moderately damaged. Of the Japanese force, Hiei is crippled and will sink tomorrow. 2 destroyers are sunk, 3 ships heavily damaged. The bombardment mission is canceled. On San Francisco's wrecked bridge, McCandless conducts a head count. Killed, 77 men including the Admiral. Wounded, 105. But Henderson Field is safe. The Marines on Guadalcanal will have air support tomorrow. The Japanese invasion is postponed, then canceled, then abandoned. The battle that was supposed to be a defeat became a Pyrrhic victory, and it happened because an Irish street fighter became an admiral and remembered, some fights you win by refusing to back down. November 13th, 1942. 6:00 am. Dawn reveals the carnage. Iron Bottom Sound, already nicknamed for the ships sunk in previous battles, has 6 more wrecks on the bottom. San Francisco limps toward port, her bridge a twisted ruin, her hull Swiss cheese still floating through sheer stubbornness. Sailors pump water, patch holes, fight fires. They've been doing it for 4 hours. When Marines on Guadalcanal see San Francisco approaching, someone radios. Who won? The response? Nobody, but the airfield's safe. The Navy awarded Callaghan the Medal of Honor posthumously, the citation reading, for extraordinary heroism and conspicuous intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty during action against enemy Japanese forces off Savo Island on the night of 12/13, November 1942. The dry language couldn't capture what happened, how he'd improvised tactics on the spot, thrown away the doctrine manual, turned a probable massacre into a mutual mauling that saved Guadalcanal. Bruce McCandless, who took command after Callaghan's death, also received the Medal of Honor for somehow winning after his admiral died. Later, McCandless said, "I just continued what he started. Get close, hit hard, don't stop. The plan was that simple and that insane." February 10th, 1943. Pacific Theater. 4 months later, a similar scenario. Japanese cruisers attempting night bombardment at Guadalcanal. The American Task Force commander remembered November 13th, remembered Callaghan's tactic, closed to 4,000 yards and brawled. The Japanese, expecting long-range combat, found themselves in knife fight range again. They withdrew. The tactic that everyone said was suicide? It became doctrine. The Navy called it close action and trained specifically for it. Callaghan's questionable thesis from 1911 became standard practice by 1943. Sometimes the crazy ideas turn out to be right, but you need someone crazy enough or brave enough to test them when it matters. 1945. Post-war, after the war ended, naval historians analyzed November 13th exhaustively. The consensus, by every conventional metric, Callaghan made wrong decisions. He abandoned coordination. He closed when he should have maintained range. He accepted catastrophic casualties, yet he won. Or rather, he didn't lose badly enough for the Japanese to win. Sometimes that's all warfare requires, refusing to lose long enough that the enemy can't win. One historian noted, Callaghan fought like a man who knew he might die, but his mission couldn't. That distinction mattered. His ships survived. The airfield survived. Guadalcanal stayed American. Everything after that, the island-hopping campaign, the eventual victory, depended on what happened in 17 minutes of chaos off Savo Island. 1973. Arlington National Cemetery. Daniel Callaghan's grave sits in Section 2, Grid N35B, a simple white headstone among thousands of identical markers. The inscription reads, Rear Admiral Daniel J. Callaghan, United States Navy Medal of Honor, 1890-1942. No mention of the battle, no description of the tactics, just dates and an honor. 3 ships have carried his name. Us Callaghan did 792, did 994, did 994. The last one, a guided missile destroyer, served until 1998. Her motto, close action. That same motto appears on the memorial plaque at Naval Station San Diego. Most visitors don't know the reference. The ones who do pause, and you can see them calculate 3,000 yards to a battleship. Some shake their heads, some smile slightly, all move on. Meanwhile, Hiei's wreckage sits at the bottom of Iron Bottom Sound in 3,000 feet of water. Divers have photographed her mangled superstructure, the damage concentrated where San Francisco's 8-inch shells tore through unarmored structures at point-blank range. The battleship's main guns are intact, useless, unable to depress far enough to hit what killed her. In naval museums, docents tell tourists about November 13th, and tourists ask the obvious question, why didn't the Americans stay at long range? The docents explain, primitive radar, darkness, surprise. Sometimes they mention Callaghan's background, the street fighting, the unusual tactical thinking. Sometimes they don't. Either way, the visitors leave understanding the battle shouldn't have worked, but it did. There are two ways to tell this story. The legend version says Daniel Callaghan was a tactical genius who invented close-range night combat, saved Guadalcanal through brilliant improvisation, died heroically while defeating superior forces. The documented record says Daniel Callaghan lost his ship's coordination, closed to suicidal range because his radar was primitive, accepted terrible casualties, died early in the engagement, and won mostly because the Japanese commander blinked first. Both are true. Both are remarkable. But here's what matters. At 1:48 a.m. on November 13, 1942, Daniel Callaghan faced a choice every commander dreads: follow doctrine and probably lose, or abandon doctrine and possibly win. Doctrine said maintain range, use coordination, preserve your force. His instinct said get close enough that size doesn't matter, accept chaos, make the enemy afraid to fire at you because they might hit their own ships. He'd been preparing for this choice his entire life. From street fights in San Francisco to staff work in Washington, every experience taught him the same lesson. Sometimes the only way forward is through. The story isn't about bravery, though he had that. It's not about sacrifice, though he gave that too. The story is about recognizing the moment when conventional wisdom becomes a trap, when doing what you're supposed to do guarantees failure, when the crazy option is actually the rational choice because all the sane options lead nowhere. Callaghan looked at battleships through darkness and asked himself a question every person faces eventually. Do I do what I'm trained to do, or what needs to be done? He chose what needed to be done. He died for it. His men died for it. But Henderson Field survived. Guadalcanal stayed American, and the war moved forward. Sometimes that's all you can ask, that your impossible choice mattered. Daniel Callaghan died at 1:56 a.m., approximately 8 minutes into the engagement. His body was recovered, identified by his Naval Academy ring. At his funeral, a Marine from Guadalcanal said, "He bought us tomorrow." That's the only epitaph that matters. Some stories don't fit on headstones. They fit in the spaces between. The 17 minutes of chaos that changed a war. The split-second decision that meant survival. The moment when someone decided that following orders mattered less than completing the mission. Callaghan once told Roosevelt, "We prepare for the worst and call it realism." On November 13th, the worst happened. He'd prepared for it, not by making perfect plans, but by accepting that perfection was impossible, chaos was inevitable, and sometimes the only way to win is to deny the enemy their victory. That's not optimism. That's not pessimism. That's something else entirely. The Irish street fighter's creed: I might lose, but you'll know you were in a fight. The story is this: some battles you win by refusing to fight them the way you're supposed to.